Welcome to So You Want to Be a Real Estate Agent. Are you evaluating your career in real estate? Feel like you're ready for a fresh start? Or ready to take your career to the next level? This is your podcast. Welcome back to So You Want to Be a Real Estate Agent. I'm your host, Meredith Fogle, and I am here once again with Tina Nader. Tina, hi. Welcome. Thank you for being here, as always. So today we are going to talk about how things are shaping up for Tina in today's market. And we are in early September now, second week of September. And the market is still interesting in that, I keep people ask me, how's the market? And I'm like, well, it depends who you are. Like, what's your question? What's the deeper question here? Are you thinking about buying, selling, renting? What's the source of the question? Because if you're an investor or a buyer right now, it's a much better time than it was to buy. If you're a seller, it is challenging right now. It's taking more time to sell, although we're feeling a little bit of renewed energy coming into the market as rates start to drop a little bit. But we are still having I think, an interesting dynamic. And Tina, I'm interested to hear your take on this, in that we're seeing buyers coming in almost feeling like coming way too far from the other direction, I personally think. And what I mean by that is, it's almost like buyers felt beat up for so long that they're coming in swinging now. And they're like, we're gonna make the lowest possible offer in the world. And meanwhile, we have sellers who are like, no, we know what our house is worth. We know the prices actually have not gone down. Maybe, we're not appreciating where we were, but our value is still solid. And sellers also know if they hang out long enough, the market will start to recover, and I think sooner than later. So what's unfortunate is I think we have buyers out there who are waiting for something that's not going to happen, which is the rates are going to go down and suddenly they're in the catbird seat in terms of the leverageable position to negotiate more strongly than they can. And those people are going to be disappointed, I think, when the market changes. So it's up to us as their agents to explain to them the reality of this market. And I've seen this so many times before, where we've had this little downswing and buyers are like, I'm gonna get in there and try to do everything I can to get the most and go way under what comps have been selling for. They don't win, and one of two things happens. Either they never buy, because once the market picks back up again, they're the same buyers who wouldn't have competed in the first place and now also can't afford it. Rates go down, prices go up, they're still in the same situation. Or they go to another agent because they're frustrated with the fact that they don't feel they were given the advice that they needed to make an actual viable offer when they could have bought. So that's kind of what I'm seeing across the board right now. The other thing I'm seeing is people sort of just hedging their bets and hanging back and waiting and being like, I'll just see, I think the Fed's gonna meet, let's see what they do with the rates. Here's the reality. Banks have already reacted to their forecasted Fed decision. So that's why we saw the rates come down. Banks react predictively. And so the rates have gone down a little bit. As of today, I think they were at the 6.29 range. So what'll happen next week with the Fed? Might there be a little bit of a bump down? Maybe. I'm not expecting anything drastic to happen. And then buyers are gonna be like, well, what happened? So they need to have that advice from us now. And they need to have the guidance that we're there to give them. So, Tina, we're coming in fresh from Tina, just having her meeting. She was showing houses yesterday. She wrote an offer yesterday that unfortunately didn't get accepted. So she's still in it. She's showing, she's got buyers, she's got clients she's working with. But Tina, how does that, as I just said this, how does this resonate with your experiences right now?
Yes, I definitely have to agree with that. I do see things on that end, and I also have seen a lot on another end. I'm seeing, as we're trying to make these purchases, a lot more contingencies, and having that conversation with your client about having the strongest offer is coming. We're doing this more and more because in this market there are still people coming up with cash. So you are competing with people who have,
Good point. Yeah.
So you still need to come in batting strong.
Yeah. Exactly.
And especially if it's the house you really want, you have to go in full, throttle, basically with the strongest offer, and you put everything out there because if you want it, chances are there's another person that really wants it too, because there are, you know, quite a few of these really special homes, especially around this neighborhood.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing that across the country too, where there are houses that come on still in a market where things are sitting that are priced exactly right, that show really, really well, are in the right location. Those are the houses that are still getting competitive offers, as you just illustrated. So Tina, let me ask you, with the one that didn't go yesterday, is there anything that you would have done differently? And I want to couch this in hopefully the manner that, you know, for the person listening out there, if you're having this same sort of frustration, and the reason I want to bring this up is I'm hearing this in so many of my coaching dialogues as well, where people are making offers and they're just not getting accepted, and they're getting frustrated, the buyers are getting frustrated, or there's this feeling of a lack of sense of urgency. I love this. This is from 7 Levels of Communication. We talked about this at our meeting. There's this quote that says, if your buyers aren't buying and your sellers aren't selling, they might not be the people who have the problem with the sense of urgency. It might be you. So I want to get your take on that and see what that means to you in a second. But first, when you think back to the situation where the person didn't get their offer accepted, is there anything you would have done differently?
So, you know, I think the only thing now that in hindsight you can look back at everything is we did go, you know, over ask, we went contingency free, and at the end of the day it came down to cash offer. So now I'm gonna have to have this conversation with clients and explain to them this situation, what just happened, and say, hey, I just wanna let you know that, you know, although this is a great offer and we're putting together a strong one, is there an option to be able to put in a cash offer? I'm bringing this up only because I just went through a similar situation where, you know, we offered over ask and a significant amount over it. The house was priced at, you know, a good price. It wasn't overpriced. It was on market, if not maybe just slightly below. So we were, you know, coming in very competitively, and it had sat for over, I think it was like 10 days, which is not long, it's not short, it's just, again, everything's catching up, right? So everyone's getting used to things hanging around a little bit longer. So we did come in competitively, and there was nothing more we could have done except come in with a cash offer, and we would have won, to be honest, because I know our offer was really strong. I have a feeling that is what I was told. The other person just gave us cash. Otherwise, you know, things would have been different. But now, in hindsight, now I'm gonna be asking my clients, listen, if this is really the house you want, is there a way? Because I do always check with the other realtor, which you wanna do too. Have you received an offer in hand? Even like I may ask that on a Friday and maybe we're writing on a Sunday, I'm gonna call on Sunday, you know, and just say, hey, it's Tina, you know, I just wanna check in with you. Do you have any offers in hand?
Okay, so here is a couple things that I want to point out from what you just said. One is, when you're up against cash, it's really hard to beat. Even if you aren't above the other offer, if you're pretty equal with it, or, you know, even a little bit below it sometimes, or a little bit higher than it sometimes, cash is like, it feels like a sure thing. We know there's no such thing as a sure thing, because guess what? I've had cash offers that have gone south. But it feels to the seller and most agents, that's like cash is king, is the thing that they have in their heads. So it's hard to combat that. So yeah, I completely agree with you. If there's any way that they can at least show on paper that they're going cash, that's great. Just remember, you also have to write in the ability to appraise if appraisal is going to be an issue. But best case scenario, you have a deal where the appraisal is going to be waived for whatever reason. Either the property is already pre-appraised or the buyer is that strong. So that's one thing. Another thing is, you talked about your kind of preemptive conversation with the agent, which is really important to have as well. And important, I think, to be able to find out, yes, do they have something in hand, but without telegraphing that you might write an offer. Because that's like the fine line we always walk, is we don't want to send them scurrying to every other agent and every other buyer who's shown interest, because then we are inadvertently stirring up competition against ourselves, and we don't want to do that. So there's like this weird little, and some people don't say anything there's one agent I know very well who has this as a tactic. He says nothing at all about an interested buyer until he submits the offer. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know how he doesn't miss the house, because maybe he's missed things that have gone under contract, but his tactic is, I'm not gonna do that, but it still doesn't preclude the agent going around and, asking everybody if they're gonna make an offer, because they've gotten an offer in hand, which if you're a good listing agent, you're gonna do, after they receive your offer. So
what would you do?
What I will do is I will say, I say that the buyer is very interested. I will say to the buyer, and this is where the sense of urgency comes in, well, then we need to go ahead and write. You don't want to let any water go under the bridge if you're going to go home and sleep on it. So that's one question I have for you. From Friday to Sunday, what happened during that time period? When you called to say, do you have any offers in hand? Had you shown the house at that point?
Okay, so when I spoke with the agent earlier in the week and he called me, he just wanted to let me know that he has had several people tell him that they were going to write. He hadn't gotten anything in his hand, but he wanted to let me know that it's been a very popular house. And just a heads up, so from that time, I just listened to him again. I didn't give any cards away, and I just said, okay, thanks for letting me know. Then on Sunday, I called him because I showed my client the house on Saturday evening, and we wrote and we presented it. So before I present, I gave him a call, and he said, I do have an offer, and it did come in about an hour ago, so I'm gonna go ahead and set a deadline for 2:00, which he had told me before he was planning on doing, but he didn't have the offer in yet. So, he did set the deadline at 2:00, and then we just were working on what we needed to do to get everything together. But from that time, that's exactly what changed. He did actually get that offer in hand, and he said it was a very strong offer.
Yeah, and then you have to think about, if you're going to write, like let's say that you had shown it Saturday, written right away Saturday, put it right in, and then put a deadline on it. That's the other potential strategy. And I know in some states that some people might be listing in, that's something that's in the contract, is what the response deadline is. We don't have that here, so you have to add that as an extra thing, and most people don't, but that's another thing to do now. Sometimes sellers respect it, sometimes they don't. But it's tough in a situation where you've got that piece in there. And then there's always the question, did my offer even really get presented? Now again, in some states, there is a form that says that the offer was presented and was rejected, and then the seller actually initials on that. We don't have that here. I wish we did, and that's something that we can always add if we want to. But yeah, it's tricky. So I hear you saying on this one, it doesn't seem like there was much more that you could do. You were very proactive in your communication.
If I may just say one more thing.
Yes.
I even went so far as to have them write a letter about what they loved about the house, and to make things easier, how they would work with them if there was furniture. Like, I literally did everything I could, contingency free, great offer of this, to present us in the best way possible. And I always act with a sense of urgency, so everything I do, most of it was done the evening before. We were just waiting on the pre-approval letter, because I had to have that. Like I said, the only thing I could have done is the cash offer that would have beat it. Because even I had a conversation with somebody after discussing the whole situation. I even said, even if we were able to go, and I said, and we probably are able to go higher, would you be willing to accept that? And the person said, absolutely not, we would not.
Because of cash being
It's cash.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So just want to walk through that to just sort of like put out there, this is what we're kind of dealing with. And now these people know for the next time, and they're still game. You're still, the first thing I would just also point out, what Tina did next, you guys know Tina by now. Do you think she went home and like cried in her soup? No. She went out and started looking for other houses.
I did door knock on my way home, so you know.
Yeah, she did that. She showed these people 2 more houses last night. So I want to revisit that in a second. But first, I want to go to one of the things that Tina's really been working on, and I want to highlight what you've been doing here, because people always talk about how are these agents who are doing business, how are they doing the business? And here's what we know. The agent who has the most conversations wins. Tina has a lot of conversations. Did you know that 63% of sellers and buyers choose their agent based on local proximity? That's why farming or geofarming is such a proven method for long-term success in real estate. If you've been considering becoming a farmer or a geofarmer in your market, but not sure how to get started, check out Farming for Real Estate Agents. This blueprint will walk you through exactly how to choose a geofarm area, how to figure out by running some calculations whether the farm area that you're selecting can support your goals, and will help you track your return on investment. You'll also hear from locally famous farmers who have already dominated their market shares, so you can R&D their secrets and dominate the area that you choose to geofarm. So she's out talking to people all the time. She's talking to people socially here in the neighborhood. She's going to networking events, which I know you're going to one today. She is doing all sorts of things. Now, the one challenge Tina has had, I hope you don't mind me mentioning this because I think it's going to be useful to everybody, is using the CRM to record her conversations, because she's either usually on her phone or she's just like out and about having these conversations. So coming back to the CRM to record the conversations has been a challenge, and has been something that Tina has been diligently working on for probably months now, right? Because we've been, as a team, this is one thing that we talk about constantly, and we have standards for having phone calls recorded in our CRM. And the reason we do that, and for the person listening who is in the same boat and is finding it challenging to record conversations in the CRM, it's so that you can nurture those leads over time, remember to get back in front of them, and then send them dripped information so that you remain top of mind for that client, and you don't get that situation that so many agents suffer from, where they were working with a person and then find out, surprise, they went with a different agent. Why that happens is there's just a lack of relationship built and a lack of communication. Somebody else slides in there with something that was useful to the buyer or the seller. So that's why we have it in the CRM. So there's a very structured means and method of communication that ensures that when that person wants to do business, it's you who they're going to do business with. So I want to ask you, Tina, what has made the difference? And first of all, share with the audience, what are your call results so far for this week? How many calls have you made?
This week, so I ended this week on Monday, which was last week, with 50.
50 calls, a huge jump. And again, not to say you weren't making calls, but you weren't recording them in the CRM. 50 calls recorded in the CRM.
Yes, 50 calls. And then yesterday I made 16.
Okay.
And my goal today is to make 30 at least. Let's say 30, maybe 50. But I have an event I'm going to later today. So again, going back to what Meredith said, it's not that I'm not talking to people or calling people. I literally advertise for myself and our company 24/7. And people know it. Like, as soon as they see me, they're like, oh, what's going on? And they know the houses, they know the market. They'll start asking me questions about, specific properties. So I do talk about it a lot. I will say, I feel like a lot, even with my own child. It's really interesting to be having conversations with 11-year-olds and then getting feedback, but good feedback. I'm like, you really have a career coming up in real estate when you're older. I like that idea. They have really great ideas. But yeah, so we'll be doing a networking event today. But what I'll do differently again is, ask more questions. What do you know about the market? Today we're going to go in with a different approach. The more and more we've been talking, and Meredith learned a lot at Summit, and just some of the more open-ended questions and having people talk, and finding out where they are in their journey of homes, and how do they feel about their existing home right now. Is it enough space? How far away do you live from the school? Would you ever consider moving closer to the school to just make your life a little bit easier, So I'm looking at things differently, which is what I constantly do, is don't stay pigeonholed, just, try to branch out, and don't always have that same conversation with people.
Yes. Oh my gosh, you're so right. Yes, well, and that's what it is all about. If we're doing that, and could be a whole other podcast, and we're not going to go down this rabbit hole too far today, but know who your audience is, because it's like, I'm sure you've been in a situation where somebody has started like just lambasting you with information that is completely irrelevant to you, and you're like, well, why am I sitting here listening to this? Clearly this person has no idea who I am, what my needs are. This is not helpful at all. How quickly can I get out of this conversation? Whereas if somebody takes the time to find out who you are, what your needs and interests are, and then can intersect with a resource or some kind of a story or data or whatever information that matters to you, that's a whole different situation. Then you're locked in, right? Like, you don't want that conversation to end, because the fact of the matter is, people care what's important to them, care about what's important to them more than anything else. And when you can help to supplement what's important to them and help them get to a goal, then you become valuable to them all of a sudden, and then you matter in their lives. So that's what you're saying, I think.
Yeah.
A great question, and this is a complete takeaway. Like Tina said, I learned so much at Tom Ferry Success Summit, brought it back to the team. I'm still going back and re-watching, re-listening. So if you're in coaching, you'll get the replays on September 18th. If you're not in coaching, you're going to want to check out the Tom Ferry Success Summit and Tom Ferry Coaching, because it is everything that we talk about here and that helps us get to greater success. So one of the great questions that he proposed that we ask, instead of the kind of sort of lame old, has anybody taken the time to tell you what your house might be worth in today's market, which is that same conversation, it's, has anybody taken the time to tell you what's happening in the market right now? Great question, right? And then they say, well, I've heard this, and you're like, oh, interesting, where'd you hear that? And how does that strike you? Or, how does that impact your real estate goals? And then for you to have a totally different conversation based on what they tell you. So love, love, love. Now, I want to ask you, because here's the other thing. Remember when I said the person who has the most conversations wins? I didn't say the person who has the most conversations on the phone wins, although that's often true. But I would say the only superior method of communication to voice is face-to-face, which is what you're doing at the networking event. So is there a world in which you could come back and go to the CRM, we use Follow Up Boss, and put the conversations into Follow Up Boss? So what'd you say, 31, how many phone calls or conversations did you say you're gonna have today?
30 would be
30.
minimum.
How many do you think you could have at the networking event?
Definitely 30.
30. So what would it look like if you go to the networking event, come back, record the conversations, and Follow Up Boss, done?
Yeah, and I gotta tell you something else, guys, that I'm doing now too. So I met I met a customer at an open house, and they told me that they're looking for houses, but they are not ready to sell yet. So that's a whole other conversation. But I know what street they live on. So that's like embedded in my head. And every day I look and see what's coming on the market. And the other day I noticed a house came on the market on that person's street. And so right away, I, forwarded the link, or I think I actually sent him a text, because we do chat via text back and forth sometimes about stuff. And then I said, hey, did you see this? It's coming on the market on your street. And then he wrote me back right away. He was like, actually, I didn't. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I said, what do you think of the price, and how does it compare to yours? I'd love to have a conversation with you and see. Yeah. And then I said, and a little bit later in the day, I said, what do you think about, I said, do you have would you want to schedule a time this week to go take a look at it? I noticed there's no open house. But why don't we go take a look at, what it is like compared to yours? Yeah. And he's like, great idea. So now I'm waiting for the response on what day, So I was like, do you want to go Friday or Saturday?
Great idea, yes.
The reason I'm bringing this up is when you're talking to your friends or customers or anything, and they're not interested in selling, and then you find out they live on, Albuquerque Avenue, if you put that in your CRM, or if oh wow, Albuquerque Avenue, if you remember that and have that tag, as soon as you see something's for sale on that street, even though they told you they're not interested in selling, what better way to start up a conversation? Because hey, maybe they only paid $500 and it's worth 1.1 now. And you're like, hey, did you see that the person down the street's selling for 1.1? What do you think about that?
That's great. I love that strategy. The other thing that has happened for me when I've done that in the past, and here's a little kind of a pointer, is I will usually say to people, I'm going to go look at it at 3:00 today. Ooh. You want to come with me?
That's
So
great.
just
You know
do it
what?
that way. And then if they're like, oh, 3 doesn't work, then be like, how about 4? Or whatever time you have open.
Fantastic. I'm totally going to use that.
Good. Okay. And then the other thing is, I can't tell you how many times this has happened to me, where you get somebody like that, and maybe they're not in the market, but they're like, you know what? Now that I'm in here, there is a friend of ours who's been wanting to move to the neighborhood. Man, we would love it if they live on the same street as us. Let me hook you up with them, and then you're like, let me send you their information, and then you say, actually, give me their information, and I'm happy to reach out, or can you just like connect us right now via text while you're there in the house, and we'll take like a little picture of something in the house you think that they'd like, and then that becomes a client for you. So it's a beautiful strategy. I love that. Okay, now I want to talk for 1 second about another kind of a process piece. So I think we solved your 30 conversations
Yes,
challenge for
definitely.
today. Boom.
Yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to load them all in today.
Yep, and you're getting pizza, I heard, tomorrow for doing all the calls. So then the other piece is the buyer process. And I want to just talk about this for like the last 5 minutes of our recording time here, which is having that consultation first. And I think this is the piece, as I'm talking to people out in the field, my coaching clients, this is the piece that I still feel like isn't getting implemented enough. And this is one of the reasons that buyers agents are finding themselves challenged with defending their fee, because they're not acting like professionals. So I'm going to take it back to like the doctor analogy again, right? So you make a doctor's appointment. Are you thinking that like during the intake, let's say you're a brand new patient, do you go in and go right into the doctor right away? No, what happens? You get sent a bunch of forms ahead of time, you sit in the office and fill out some forms, they take your insurance information, there's this whole kind of like gatekeeping piece that happens so that the doctor in the office can serve you well, can cover your visit, you don't have to pay out of pocket for it, and has information that they need to be able to quickly and effectively diagnose you when the doctor actually takes the time with you. They're not doing it like on the fly. Like, what would you think if you went into a new doctor and the doctor's like, oh, well, hold on a minute, let me get your insurance information. Wouldn't you be like, don't you have a staff? Like, don't you have a process? Of course, and maybe you don't pay that doctor as much, who knows? But the same kind of lack of professionalism, I'm gonna call it that, and just call it out, I think is happening among some buyer's agents. And I'm not sure why that is, because guys, as a buyer's agent, you have as much value as a listing agent. And that is something that I know so many of you don't believe is true. And why I know that is because you're not acting like listing agents. Because what listing agents do is they prepare for the appointment. They take forms with them. They have an intake form. They have a marketing plan that they're taking with them. They have a full presentation they're going through. They do all of that before meeting with the seller. They're not just popping over and opening a door. If you're not putting that same kind of a process in place as you're working with buyers, you are only a key and you are going to be replaced very quickly, or you're going to make no money because you don't deserve a fee, so you're not going to be able to command your fee. So having a process in place in office, I hope that those of you out there have some kind of a brick and mortar space that you can meet with people. I know sometimes you don't. You got to do it at a Starbucks or at the person's house, and if that's the case, or on Zoom if you've got somebody who's out of town. But do it in a way that's face to face so that you are making that meaningful human connection with the other person, and they understand the value of working with you and how specifically you are best suited to help them meet their goals. It also makes everything much more efficient. So again, going back to the doctor analogy, you go in, they're just asking you a million questions, and there's been no real diagnosis over like 45 minutes or an hour, or you got to come back for another appointment because they're like, okay, well now I have enough information to understand what's really wrong. Let's come back next time and we'll really diagnose this and fix this for you. Would you go back to that doctor again? Of course not. So you've got to do your due diligence first to make sure you understand what the client needs, and the only way to do that is to have a thorough buyer's consultation appointment before ever showing the buyer a house. And if for some reason you're off track and you've shown several houses to a buyer and they are not proceeding, come back again to the table, have a reevaluation, a reconsultation, so that you're readdressing the points that are being missed that are creating a non-viable buyer situation. So Tina, for you, are you finding the same kind of thing in your world?
Absolutely.
Okay, and what have been your big learnings when it comes to how to do a buyer consultation effectively? Because I know this has also been something you've been working on, and a big evolution in how you're operating.
Right, because there's different places that you meet buyers. But I think regardless if you meet somebody at an open house, or if they come knocking, or it's, you know, a cold call. The point is to really sit down with them, and, you know, I prefer to do it here in our office, and have this conversation before you start running around showing homes.
Yeah.
Because like we've talked about this before, you're gonna waste your time and their time, and it's not professional, but you're not finding out what they really, really want. And that's pointless, because you're just gonna keep showing homes, what about this one, what about that, what about this? You need to find out what it is exactly that they're missing in their current home. I love asking that question. What do you love about your house, and what do you wish your house had, you know, that you don't have? You know, because some people aren't moving from here, they're coming from another state, right?
Yeah.
So they're like, I love my house, I wish it was just like that. Well, what do you have? What are you looking for? And what's most important to you? And don't forget to ask what's important also for, you know, their partner or their child or family members, or who else is going to be living in the home.
Yes.
Basically drill down. You got to funnel and find out all these things and then put it all together. But getting back to Meredith's point, it's really the buyer's consultation. It's finding out their needs, you know, and then selling and showing to those needs.
Yes.
Because once you know their needs, you may have a house, but you'll know how to modify it or to change something to make it to their needs. So you could take something that they would potentially say no to, and right off the bat, you're like, oh, I already know we can put a door over here. I already checked for you.
Yeah.
So I know that would check one of your boxes. So the idea here is to know what they want, to just go ahead and check all those boxes for them, right? Help them make it easy and simple, and it can happen. I can tell you, I've done it lately. I sold, after knowing my client, 2 of them. One, I sold them a house on the first house I showed them, and the second one, I sold them a house on the first and second time. The first time we didn't get it because the seller didn't want to negotiate their price, which I just saw they dropped by $20,000, which was our offer. And the second time I showed them, I had already listened. So for that one, I took the lead on it. I was like, guys, I already know what you want. I was like, let's go take a look at this house. It has A, B, C, and D, and I'm so excited to show it to you. And I think that we should act fast on it.
There's a sense of urgency. And that's the proactivity that I'm talking about. And then you do what Tina does. You get to work, you go find the person in the house, but you'll be amazed how many times when you're just like out in the world, you'll get a call, you'll see a house come on, you'll get invited to a listing appointment, you're like, oh my gosh, this is the house for those people. It's just funny how like everything aligns like that sometimes. So you go find the house for them. And then the last thing I want to leave with is make sure that you have a buyer update process in place. Again, just like a listing agent, we need to be keeping the buyer informed about what the market is doing, what the rates are doing, what you are doing to help find the house that they want. So they're not just sitting there feeling like, okay, crickets, where did Tina go? And I know you don't do this, but you know, so many times this is how buyers just go to other agents because the agent that they've signed a buyer agency agreement with isn't keeping them updated, and they feel like they were just forgotten about. Or they feel like, well, I'm doing everything to find the house myself, so why should I pay an agent to do this? That's never how we want our clients to feel. So be proactive like Tina, create that sense of urgency, stay in front of them, turn over rocks to find those houses for your buyer, and you will have a client for life. All right, we got into a lot this episode. This is great. Tina, congrats on all your calls. I can't wait to hear what happens from your appointments today, and we will continue the conversation. If you would like to reach out to us, to find out more about Tina, to pick our brains about things that are working for us, feel free to leave us a comment or send us a DM directly on social media. Please also remember to leave us a review or a rating on the platform on which you are listening. It would mean the world to us, and it means the world that you are here. Thank you so much for listening. Tina, thank you.
Thank you.
This has been So You Want to Be a Real Estate Agent. We'll see you next time.
Bye.